I was always the quiet one, the dependable one, the one who blended into the wallpaper of my own family's story. My days as a history teacher in Fort Collins passed in steady rhythms, grading essays, sipping lukewarm coffee, listening to teenagers squabble over dates and names. I loved that predictability, it anchored me. But deep down, I wondered if there was more to me than just good old Cammy. My parents certainly didn't think so. Dad, with his unbending rules, and Mom, gentle but distant, both saw me as the glue that held things together. Then there was Chase, my younger brother, the golden child, a lawyer in Colorado Springs, flashing that charming smile that won over everyone. Mom, half Lakota, had long buried that part of herself. It's just history, Cammy, she'd say, shutting me out with those words. I never pushed. I was too afraid of what I might find behind that closed door. At 39, I thought I knew myself, a teacher, a peacemaker, the reliable daughter. Then everything shattered. The phone rang before dawn, a police officer's clipped voice on the line. My parents had died in a car crash. I sat frozen, listening to the tick of my kitchen clock echo like a hammer against my skull. The following days blurred, funeral arrangements, paperwork, endless phone calls. Chase showed up once, sharp in his black suit, murmured a few platitudes, then disappeared. I'm swamped, Cammy, he texted. I swallowed my hurt. As always, I carried on. At the lawyer's office, the smell of old paper hung heavy. I sat across from Chase, his face blank, as the lawyer droned on. The Colorado Springs estate and all assets go to Chase Holbrook. Chase nodded, as if it were obvious. Then came my part, a cabin in Wyoming, of family significance to Camille Holbrook, no value listed. A crumbling cabin in the middle of nowhere. I looked at Chase, waiting for something. Guess Mom and Dad knew you liked quiet places, he said, his tone patronizing. His words sliced through me. I clenched my tissue, my chest burning. Was that really all they thought I deserved? Back home, the silence roared. Eli, my boyfriend, paced the living room, a beer bottle thudding against the table. They screwed you over, Cammy, why aren't you fighting this? I tried to explain, I didn't have the strength for a battle. Grief was enough to drown me. Eli's voice rose. You let everyone walk on you. I need someone who stands up for herself. He slammed the door behind him. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the still apartment. I stood there, staring at a family photo, Mom's soft smile, Dad's rigid jaw, Chase's effortless charm, and me, half hidden in the corner, as always. All my life, I'd held things together, stayed quiet, kept the peace, but now, with my parents gone, Chase taking everything, and Eli gone too, I felt like I was unraveling. That cabin in Wyoming, that worthless pile of logs, tugged at me. Why leave it to me? What significance could it hold? I grabbed my car keys, my hands trembling. Maybe that cabin held answers. Maybe it was time to find out who I really was, or who my parents thought I was. The drive north felt like an escape, though I wasn't sure from what. The endless highway unspooled ahead, sagebrush blurring past. The hum of my old sedan was the only sound. At last, the dirt road appeared, dust swirling in my wake. The cabin rose in the distance, sagging and broken, its roof partly caved in, windows opaque with grime. I stepped out. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. The door creaked, resisting my push. Inside, the stench of rotting wood struck me. The floorboards moaned under each step, dust drifting in slanted beams of light. This was my inheritance. I touched a splintered table, a wave of loneliness crashing over me. What had my parents seen in this place? Why me? Yet something in the silence pulled at me, a quiet whisper I couldn't name. I dropped to the floor, my parents' faces flashing in my mind. Their voices were gone forever, and this cabin was all I had left. I started cleaning to keep my hands busy, sweeping dust that made me cough. I tugged at a collapsed bookshelf. It gave way with a groan, revealing a hollow thud behind it. Heart hammering, I pushed harder. The wall shifted, revealing a hidden door, its hinges stiff with rust. I forced it open, the metal shrieking. Inside, a narrow space glowed faintly. My breath caught. A feathered headdress rested on a shelf, its eagle plumes still proud, a drum, a pair of beaded moccasins, pottery etched with spirals, a bundle of sage, all waiting in the stillness. And in the corner, a leather-bound journal, half buried in dust. I brushed it off, my fingers tingling. The name on the cover stopped me cold, Thomas Black Elk, my mother's father. The grandfather I had only heard whispers about, a man my mother had locked away in her memory. I opened the journal. its pages crackling softly, a mix of English and Lakota flowing across the paper. This wasn't just a cabin. It was a secret, a heartbeat I'd never known was there. I sat by the broken window, the wind slipping through the roof like a ghost. My grandfather's words felt alive, as if he were sitting beside me. He wrote of Lakota families forced from their lands, of sacred items hidden to protect them from government seizure. They took our hills, our rivers, he wrote, but not our spirit. One entry struck like a lightning bolt: to my granddaughter, whom I will never meet, one day you will feel an emptiness where your roots should be, follow it home. My eyes blurred. Mom had never mentioned any of this, not the headdress, not the drum, not her father's fight. I traced the Lakota words with clumsy fingers, wishing I could read them, feeling the drum almost vibrate beside me, or maybe that was my own pulse. I thought of Mom's clipped voice whenever I'd asked about our heritage. Let it go, Cammy. Had she known about this room? Had she hidden it, or tried to forget? I closed the journal, my hands trembling. For the first time, I felt connected, to her, to him, to something far older and stronger than me. The cabin wasn't empty, it was full of a past I barely understood. The silence pressed in heavier than ever. I found myself constantly touching the journal, the leather soft and worn, like a familiar hand on my shoulder. Desperate for answers, I called Dr. Marlene Eagleton, a Lakota historian at the University of Wyoming. Her voice on the line was warm but edged with curiosity as I described what I'd found. She arrived the next morning, her long silver braid gleaming in the sun. Inside the hidden room, she paused, her eyes wide. Camille, she whispered, these aren't just artifacts, they're sacred, living pieces of our history. Her fingers brushed the drum with reverence. She estimated their value, millions, perhaps, but her voice turned firm. These belong to the Lakota people, not in a museum vault. I nodded, but my stomach twisted. Millions. I was a schoolteacher struggling to make rent. That kind of money could change everything. Word spread too quickly. Reporters started calling, their messages stacking up, buzzing like hornets in my pocket. I sat by the broken window, the journal open on my lap. My grandfather's words echoed, follow it home. But what was home? I wasn't sure anymore. Then I heard tires crunch on gravel. Chase's sleek black SUV appeared, gleaming in the dusty clearing. He stepped out, his polished shoes almost absurd against the dirt. When I opened the door, its hinges shrieked. Chase stood there, all charm and sharp edges. Cammy, he said smoothly, heard you found some old junk. His eyes flicked to the hidden room. Let's make this simple, he continued, leaning against the splintered table. I'll trade you the Colorado estate for this cabin and everything in it. You're a teacher, not a historian. You don't need this. My hands balled into fists. The estate, my parents' house, every memory, dangled like bait. Come on, he pressed, his tone silky and cutting. You aren't cut out for this, let me handle it. I thought of his manicured life, his big house, all the things he'd claimed without question. The drum seemed to vibrate faintly, or maybe it was my blood roaring in my ears. I wanted to scream at him, to finally tell him no, but I stood frozen, the floor creaking beneath me. Chase left with a smirk, his engine growling as he disappeared into the trees. I sank to the floor, clutching the journal, smaller than ever. That night, the cabin felt like it was breathing around me, tightening, alive. I paced until my feet ached, thumb hovering over Eli's number. Maybe he was right, maybe I really was too weak. I called him, his voice was rough, surprised. Cammy, you okay? I stammered about the artifacts, the cabin, the money. His tone softened, hinting that if I sold everything, maybe we could try again. I hung up, heart hammering. Later, I found a curator's business card in my email, a leftover tip from a reporter. It gleamed in the lamplight, a doorway to a life without debt, without worry. I could sell it all, walk away. My eyes fell to the journal, its pages fluttering in the draft. One entry stopped me, my grandfather refusing gold for the drums. They are not ours to sell, he wrote, they are our soul. My hand shook, I lit a match, its hiss loud in the silence, and watched the curator's card curl and blacken, smoke rising into the dark rafters. My eyes burned, but my heart felt lighter. I called Dr. Marlene, my voice steady for the first time. I don't want to sell, I said, I want to protect it. The cabin seemed to shift, almost as if it exhaled. After burning that card, something inside me unlocked. Dr. Marlene and I sat on the sagging porch, sage smoke curling around us. I told her my idea, a Lakota cultural retreat center, a place for language, beadwork, stories, healing. She studied me, her braid catching the early light. It's bold, she said finally, but it's right. We drove to meet elders Rose White Deer and Thomas Redhawk at the community hall. Rose's hands were knotted like old roots. When she took mine, her eyes were kind and deep. "This is what your grandfather hoped for," she murmured, nodding at the journal. Thomas's low voice rumbled that he'd teach drum making. Their faith in me made my chest ache in the best way, like something long dormant finally waking up. Back at the cabin, I sketched plans by lantern light. I saw children learning Lakota words, elders sharing stories under the porch, the headdress safe and cherished, not sold. For the first time, I felt my mother's presence close, warm, and proud. I wasn't just saving the cabin, I was claiming my family, my story, my place. But Chase didn't disappear. A week later, a letter arrived. The envelope sliced my thumb as I tore it open. Chase was suing for co-ownership, claiming the will was unclear and the cabin undervalued. As the paper crinkled in my hands, my stomach dropped. The fight was just beginning. I heard his voice echo in my mind, "You're not cut out for this." He'd hired a slick lawyer who called me, voice dripping with condescension, urging me to settle to avoid embarrassment. Meanwhile, Chase spread rumors, whispering to reporters that I was unstable, too fragile to hold a legacy. In the cabin, the floor creaked beneath my pacing feet, doubt seeping in like damp through old wood. I had always been the quiet one, the one who stepped aside. What if Chase was right? What if I lost everything, my grandfather's legacy, the elders' faith? The drum in the hidden room had fallen silent, its hum gone. I clutched the journal, fingers tracing its worn edges as my heart wavered. I felt outmatched, as I always had. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows as if the cabin itself was urging me, "Stand your ground." In the courtroom, the air smelled of polished wood, the judge's gavel tapping like a heartbeat. My palms were slick as Chase's lawyer painted me as fragile, unfit to guard something precious. My lawyer, from a native advocacy group, squeezed my arm, her pen moving briskly across notes. The journal rested beside me, its weight a quiet anchor. When I finally stood, my voice quivered at first. I spoke of the hidden room, my grandfather's words. I opened the journal, its pages rustling, and read aloud. "Our soul isn't in land or gold, it's in what we carry forward." With each word, my voice gained strength, rising to fill the room. I spoke of the retreat, the elders' unwavering support, the children learning their language again. Chase stared at the floor, jaw clenched. The judge leaned forward, glasses glinting. When she ruled, her gavel cracked sharp and final. "The decedent's intent is clear. Ms. Holbrook has honored that legacy." I exhaled, the room blurring around me. Outside, the air felt bright and alive. I held the journal to my chest, feeling my grandfather's steady spirit, my mother's quiet love. I had found my voice, and no one, not Chase or my own doubt, could silence it again. The cabin transformed, rebuilt by many hands. The Holbrook Cultural Retreat opened on a crisp spring morning, laughter and sage smoke drifting through the air. Volunteers replaced the broken roof, polished the floors until they no longer groaned. Inside, Rose White Deer taught beadwork, her needle tapping softly as children threaded red and black beads. Thomas Redhawk's drumming class pulsed like a heartbeat through the halls. I moved through the scent of cedar, watching elders share Lakota stories, their voices stitching past and present together. A young boy practicing hello in Lakota beamed at me, stumbling over each sound with joy. I clutched my grandfather's journal, feeling my mother's spirit at ease at last. This was no longer just a cabin, it was a home for language, healing, and belonging. I stood on the porch, the wind now gentle, and looked to the mountains. For years, I had been invisible, but here, in this chorus of voices and warmth, I saw myself clearly. This was my inheritance, not built from wealth, but from love. One afternoon, Eli pulled up in his truck, boots crunching the gravel. He smiled as if nothing had changed. "This place is incredible, Cammy," he said softly. He hinted at a new start, eyes searching mine. I thought of his old words, that he wanted someone who fought. I looked at the glowing windows and felt no urge to turn back. "Eli," I said, voice firm, "I didn't lose myself. I found me. You wanted someone else." His smile faded, and he nodded before turning away. I watched his truck disappear down the dusty road, feeling lighter, like shedding an old skin. I turned back toward the retreat, children's laughter spilling into the dusk. I was right where I belonged. The naming ceremony came at twilight, the sky painted in pink and gold, a fire snapped and hissed, sparks leaping upward, rose-white deer stood, shawl shimmering, and called me forward. The drumbeat thumped slow and strong as she spoke. "You have returned to us," she said, "we keepy, she who returns to the house." The name wrapped around me like a warm cloak. I turned to the circle of elders, children, and friends. "I thought I was invisible," I said, my voice clear and strong, but I simply hadn't seen myself. The fire cracked, stars gleamed above, I felt my grandfather's guiding hand, my mother's gentle smile. A young Lakota girl approached shyly, holding a crinkled drawing, the cabin under a glowing moon, its windows bright. "My grandma says we can come here to remember," she said, her voice quiet but certain. I knelt on the cool grass, seeing my reflection in her dark eyes. I slipped the drawing into my pocket, its edges soft against my fingers. This place, once broken, now held all our stories, our future. I was no longer unseen. That night by the fire, I opened my grandfather's journal, its leather warm in my hands. On the final page, he had written, "You found the key, not to a door, but to yourself." The words took root deep inside me. The firelight flickered over the cabin walls, now a stronghold, not just for me, but for us all. I saw my mother smile, felt her heart beating in mine. I closed the journal, the pages whispering shut. "We keepy, she who returns to the house." I was home, carrying my grandfather's spirit forward, ready to guide the next daughter when her time came.